I'm a dad. I have kids. I am responsible for them. I have to feed them, or else I go to jail. And my 4-year-old son is what some people might consider a picky eater. He has a very narrow palate. He's very specific about the things that he likes, and he is resistant to change, but I'm working with him. And every once in a while, I'll introduce him to a new food. Like the other day, I was like, here's some edamame. And he was like, I don't like edamame. And I was like, you've never had edamame. He's like, I'm afraid of edamame. And I go, well, what does Scotty K say? Eat it afraid. I do have some empathy for him, a little bit of understanding, because my mother liked to tell everybody that I was also a picky eater when I was a child, which is bullshit. I was not a picky eater. My mother was a terrible cook, and I'm not afraid to say that because she's dead to me. She's also dead to everybody else. My mother is dead. I'm not afraid of no ghosts, but I was afraid of my mother's meatloaf. My mother's meatloaf recipe was absolutely bonkers. It was ground beef, 2 eggs, a cup of breadcrumbs, and milk, and then also onion soup mix. What the fuck? For years, I was subjected to this loaf of meat with onion soup mix, and finally I went to my mother and I said, Mom, I don't like your meatloaf. She said, well, your father loves my meatloaf. I said, no, he loves you. She said, your brothers love my meatloaf. I said, no, they're barbarians with aguasia, which means they cannot taste anything. Good for them. She said, fine, I guess I'm just bad at making meatloaf. Then you make the meatloaf. Me being 12 years old and the year being 1997, I was forced to go to what is called a library. And I found some recipe books. And I looked up some meatloaf recipes. I found 4 different ones. All of them looked amazing. And none of them involved onion soup mix. So I made meatloaf for everybody. I made an entire dinner at 12 years old for a family of 5. And after dinner, my dad looked at my mom and said, this was the best meatloaf I've ever had. Good job, Maggie. He didn't know that I made the meatloaf because he didn't pay the fuck attention to us. My mom looked at my dad and said, I'm glad you liked it. And then she stood up from the table and walked into the other room, and she turned on the film Beaches, starring Bette Midler, which means she needed to feel emotions. And that was the only way that she knew how to cry. And I knew that I had fucked up. From that day forward, I never criticized my mother's cooking again. And also, from that day forward, I had to make meatloaf twice a month for my family. I got real good at loafing meat, and I don't use onion soup mix. I put a lot of tender love and care into it, and I give a shit. And about a week ago, I made meatloaf for my 4-year-old son, and he looked at me and said, Dad, I don't like your meatloaf. I deserve this.